Welcome, Vice Mayor and council members. I call this special meeting of the Albany City Council for March 25th, 2024 to order. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of LaShawn. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. City Clerk, will you please call roll?
Councilmember Hansa Romero is absent. Councilmember Jordan?
Here.
Councilmember Tiedemann?
Here.
Vice Mayor Lopez?
Here.
And Mayor Mickey?
Here. Apologies, I will be taking off and putting on a mask today. I'm getting over a little bit of a cold. Wanted to start off with some decorum guidelines for the meeting today. We understand today's agenda is of particular concern to members of Albany and the larger community we live in. The council shares this concern with you. We are pleased that you've joined us this evening to comment on this matter. In order to work collaboratively, we ask that all community members be respectful. Time allotted to the public comment will be based on the number of people wishing to speak, and time limit for each speaker will be maintained. Please note, disruptions to the meeting will not be tolerated. Moving on to the sole item on our agenda today, item 3-1, resolution calling for a bilateral ceasefire in Gaza. For those who have not seen, there's in the back of the room, there's the agenda, an attached memorandum, and the actual ceasefire resolution as brought forward by the ad hoc committee. I want to thank Councilmember Tiedemann for working with me and meeting with various constituents over the past few weeks. Through our meetings with community groups, leaders, and interested residents, we have gotten to really learn each person's lived experience and really truly appreciate the time that you've spent with us. In all, the committee held over a dozen meetings with interested parties from all sides of the issue. And with that, I'll hand it over to Councilmember Tiedemann.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I'll just echo some of what the mayor said, and first thank him for his cooperation in working with me on this. This process would have been much more difficult without his cooperation, and he's a credit to our city council. Also, I want to reiterate his thanks to everyone we met with. The vast majority of those meetings were instigated by people contacting us because they were interested and wanted to talk to, and the vast majority were also Albany residents, so I appreciate everybody taking the time to meet with us. We took something valuable away from nearly every one of those meetings. If you have not read the resolution or the memo, I encourage everybody to take a look. In the memo, we try and spell out the goals that the mayor and I agreed on in wanting to do this and what we were trying to address. And I think those inform a lot of what we chose to focus on and how we chose to do it. For the council and everyone else, I'd say there's no perfect language to express what we're trying to do. I'm not so vain as to say what we have written is perfect, but I will say we've thought about just about every word long and hard. So as I normally do, as everyone on the council knows, I will say writing new language from the dais often is very tricky. So I'd caution us about it tonight, especially given that comparatively small changes in this for this item can have big impacts, as we learned throughout this drafting process. And with that, I think I will leave the rest of my comments for our discussion.
I'll turn to council and open up for any questions from council members. Not seeing any questions from council, I will open up for public comment. I would ask those in the council chamber who would like to speak to make sure that you filled out a speaker form, and also just so I have a sense of the number of speakers, if you could raise your hands. Okay. And has everyone had an opportunity to fill out a speaker card? Great. And City Clerk, how many online?
Currently 6 hands.
Currently 6 hands, okay. We're going to do slightly modified process than we've done in the past. We are going to start in the council chambers, and the city clerk will call up 5 people at a time to speak at the podium. And then on the 4th person, she will call up the next 5 so that people can remain seated as long as until their group of 5 is called up. With that, city clerk, if we could have the first 5 people.
Mark T., Robert B., Alan M., Jonathan M., and Susan M.
As the first speakers line up,
Line up behind the podium, please.
I do want to also remind everyone that we ask that all comments be addressed to the council and that you refrain from, apologies, that you refrain from showing your support or dissent for the current speaker. The council wants everyone to hear the comments of the speaker and for all to feel comfortable speaking and not feel intimidated by others' comments or reactions.
So let me repeat that. It's Mark, last name initial T, Robert B., Alan M., Jonathan M., and Susan M. Go ahead and approach this podium.
The Israelis, after many unsuccessful attempts to create reconciliation, gave the Palestinians Gaza. Hamas used $1 billion to turn that into a modern-day Holocaust machine. They invaded Israel, murdered people, raped women, tied people together with wire strings and burned them, put babies in microwave ovens. I think any resolution should call for the immediate elimination of Hamas. A ceasefire resolution endangers the existence of Israel and endangers the Jewish people and encourages anti-Semitism, which I see growing in Albany. Finally, the war can be over if Hamas surrenders, releases the hostages,
Please wrap up
and
your comments.
leaves.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Hi, thank you for letting me address you. My name is Susan Myers. I've been a citizen of Albany resident for 45 years. My kids went through the school system. I've been involved in committees that benefited schools and also my neighborhood and the city of Albany as well. So today I am here to address you. In order to achieve a true peace between Israelis and Gazans, there must be a complete dismantling and removal of Hamas, a U.S. designated terrorist organization. The government of Hamas has vowed to carry out barbaric atrocities again and again as they committed on October 7th, murdering men, women, and children, beheading babies, raping women, and taking hostages. If you care about Israelis and Palestinians, you will include the removal of Hamas from power in the resolution. Let the Israelis and
Please wrap up your
Palestinians work together to develop Gaza into a thriving region. Hamas.
Thank you for your comments.
My time's over?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
Good.
Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Mincer. I'm honored to serve as the Director of External Relations at the Jewish Community Relations Council, the largest collective voice of Bay Area Jews, representing over 50 synagogues and organizations, including hundreds of Albany residents. We have consistently advised for local boards to avoid resolutions about foreign affairs because these efforts exacerbate tensions among traumatized communities, as you will soon see here today. With the language before you, we are asking you to amend the resolution to make the uncontroversial clarification that Hamas must be removed from power for a lasting peace for this war. Last month, I was in Israel, and I directly saw the aftermath of Hamas's barbaric attacks, and I also had the honor of speaking with residents of all backgrounds, Israeli Jews, Arabs, Palestinians, and others. They don't agree on much, but one thing stood out. They all said that peace is not possible with Hamas in power. In fact, a new survey shows that support for Hamas as a political party in Gaza is at its lowest levels, 34%. I'm asking you to align Albany with the United States, EU, UK, and recognize that true peace is only available if Hamas is removed from power. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, my name is Rob. I've been to the region 20 times, and I want to say it's far more complicated and different than what the press portrays it as. I am opposed to any resolution, but I want to thank you for all the hard work you've done in creating the resolution you have. I pray every day for the well-being of Israelis and also the innocent people in Gaza. I'm requesting that the statement you've made be amended to call for the removal of Hamas from power. Hamas is a terror organization that was behind October 7th, behind many similar attacks in the past, and has said it will attack Israel again in the future. Experts in the field, including former Secretaries of State Condoleezza Rice and Hillary Clinton, have said there can be no peace until Hamas is removed from power. I would also ask that you amend the title of the resolution, calling for long-term peace and security rather than just for a ceasefire. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
And after Alan M., it would be Larry H., Helen F., Dorothea, and Faith M., and Rochelle N.
I'm a resident of Kensington, and I first want to thank the Council for the time and effort it has devoted to this issue. I respectfully want to point out that the title of this resolution as currently formulated does a disservice to it. The title, by highlighting only one of the multiple goals in the resolution, in effect says that the other goals are only secondary. It leaves the impression that the Council would accept a ceasefire without the release of hostages. It similarly relegates the call for peace and tolerance within our community to the shadows. This is the local issue about which local government should be concerned first and foremost, given the violence and rancor we have seen in the East Bay towards Jews. In summary, please reconsider the title and make it more general so that it is consistent with the multiple goals laid out in the text and so that it does not distort the contents of the resolution. Thank you again for listening and for all your work.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, I'm Dorothea Durans. We do not want you to pass a ceasefire resolution of any sort. But since Mayor Mickey and Mr. Tideman decided to present one to the City Council and the public, we wanted to present our own resolution, which I presented to you this evening and by email in prior times. There are 109 people who signed this resolution. Therefore, the end of it says, therefore it be resolved that because the City Council of Albany is elected by all the people of Albany whose interests they are required to represent, and because their proclamation supporting peace and concern for all parties was submitted to the public by them, we demand that they deal with the running of the City of Albany for the benefit of all of its residents, and we demand that the City Council places undivided attention on matters that directly impact the City of Albany going forward and not utilize any city funds for international matters as you are currently doing today. We do not think that you should omit the removal of Hamas and the return of all the hostages from this resolution. It is, you could call it a peace resolution instead of a ceasefire resolution. Thank you. Hamas doesn't want one.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. My name is Larry Hendel. I'm a member of Jewish Voice for Peace, but I'm just speaking as an individual. I support this resolution. I think it's about as even-handed in this world, in this context, that people could have come up with. And I support the goal of ceasefire. Nothing will happen without a ceasefire. Yes, the 1,200 people killed October 7th was terrible. The 30,000 people that have been killed since then is also extremely terrible. You know, so much of this debate comes down to people saying who did what to whom and who is suffering the most. That can be a little bit relevant. I mean, history is relevant, but history is not determinative. We are human beings. We can overcome history. That is how we got the progress that we have made. And suffering is not a zero-sum game. I heard someone say that, a rabbi actually, and I totally believe it. I support the resolution. Only with the ceasefire will there be enough dialogue to bring justice to the region and to stop the killing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi,
Hi, my name is Helen Finkelstein, and I am Jewish. I support the resolution. This is not, our concern is not about Hamas or about peace or about who did what to whom. The concern here is about a genocide. And we heard the resolution about our moral debt to the Albany people because of the genocide that happened here. And this moral debt obligates us to be opposed to any genocide and not to turn a blind eye to it. And so that's what this resolution is attempting to do. This resolution is intending to stop a genocide that is taking place. And we have a moral obligation to heed it. That's why I support it.
Thank you for your comments.
My name is Rochelle Nason, and I do not support the passing of any resolution, although I would like to say I think this is significantly improved from an earlier version that was seen. Particularly appreciate the support for self-determination for both peoples, and a negotiated peace between those determined peoples is appreciated. There are aspects of the resolution, such as the casualty figures and the passive voice used to describe those, that are deeply hurtful and cruel to survivors of these attacks, saying that people lost their lives when they were in fact attacked and murdered is a cruelty that is not really necessary in this context. In any event, my time is up, and thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
After Faith, it would be Haganush, Peter, last initial B, Barry P, and Francesco P, and Sandra R.
Ideally, Albany should not be making foreign policy statements. However, the city seems determined on doing just that. I appreciate the City Council's earnest attempt at creating a resolution that acknowledges the pain of both its Israeli and Jewish constituency and its Palestinian Arab constituency. A few suggestions to the wording. On the seventh whereas, Israeli deaths have continued since October 7th. This number needs to be updated. The second, be it resolved, calls for an unconditional release of all civilian hostages and would allow the Palestinian perpetrators and criminals of October 7th to go unpunished. This wording also must be changed. The title of the resolution also needs to be modified. Just yesterday, over 50 rockets were launched by Hezbollah into northern Israel. Hundreds have been launched in recent weeks. Calling for a bilateral ceasefire is insufficient. Please call for a real and sustainable peace throughout the entire region, rather than a bilateral ceasefire in Gaza. Thank you for your hard work and the effort you have put into this issue.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi there, my name is Peter Bernhardt. Thank you for meeting with me and my group about this. You have my email comments. It could be improved, but I appreciate the work you did and the stress you're under to do something right, so I support it. And the time I have left, I'm just going to read a quote here from I.F. Stone, investigative journalist who most people here should know. "The only kinds of fights worth fighting for are those you're going to lose, because somebody has to fight them and lose and lose and lose until someday somebody who believes as you do wins." That famous quote applies to the extent we keep protesting, keep lobbying our representatives, keep supporting with whatever you can spare to those groups that are taking direct action. Together and in our numbers, it's worth everything, even if you can only point to a single victory achieved in this fight for peace and justice. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I too thank the council for the many hours and meetings we've had over this time. I understood exactly what you're dealing with in coming up with a difficult decision. The resolution that I read that you came forward with, it talks about people's pain, people's feelings of fear and so forth, entirely appropriate for all of the issues involved. But what's If I can make a critical point, since I argued it many times, there is a fact at the basis of all of this, and it's really the central fact, and it was left out, and that is basically that we're dealing with a genocide, and a genocide that is ongoing and people are dying. And it is not just name-calling, it is, of course, the judgment of the International Court of Justice that made an unambiguous designation of what Israel is doing is an ongoing genocide. So that's what we are opposed to, that's what we would like to see end, and all the other issues can go after that. Yes.
Thank you for your comments.
As a longtime resident of Albany, I'm very proud of our city for always standing up, speaking against violence and injustice by passing resolutions, such as the one passed in 2021, asking our leaders to act immediately to help the Afghan people, or passing declarations, such as the one read at the beginning of every city council meeting, acknowledging the genocide against the indigenous people, and not shying away from the word genocide, as uncomfortable and painful that might be. Today, we need to stand up one more time and pass a resolution for an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire. We need to stand for what is the truth. We need to face the truth, even if it will be uncomfortable for some. And the truth, according to International Court of Justice and almost all the world, is that Israel is committing plausible genocide.
Thank you for your comments.
Your proclamation has no mention of Hamas, the terrorist aggressor who started this war with their rampage that included the murder of innocents, kidnappings, and sexual assaults. This weekend, a terrorist attack in Russia by ISIS murdered 130 defenseless Russians at a music venue, just like Hamas's cowardly attack on Israel on October 7th. You have crafted a document that did not require the surrender of Hamas, who started this conflict. Any ceasefire should include the unconditional surrender of the Hamas leadership. Leaving Hamas out of this is like talking about World War II and omitting any reference to the Nazi Party. This glaring omission shows a lack of moral courage. Albany deserves better.
Thank you for your comments.
After the speaker, it would be Itamar L., Noga A., Zanab, and Yuko, and Amber. And for those who just arrived, if you'd like to speak tonight, please fill out a public comment card, speaker card, and turn them in to me, please. Thank you.
I'm a 39-year resident of Albany, and I'm here to speak for the over 25,000 women and children who have been massacred by the indiscriminate bombing of Gazans. And I'm here to support a ceasefire so that this will end and there can be some resolution to this conflict. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Itamar Landau. I'm speaking on behalf of the Jewish Coalition of Berkeley. Just founded in December, now have over 350 members, at least 30 of whom are Albany residents. We do thank the subcommittee for a heartfelt effort to have people be heard and for an attempt at a balanced resolution. There's a lot of differences of opinion, as you're hearing tonight, about who's to blame. As you yourselves pointed out, maybe the one and only key point of agreement is that we all really pray for a long-term peace and security for all peoples in the region. So I urge you to put that squarely in the title. A ceasefire is nothing but a tactical aim where both sides at this point would clearly claim to exploit it to just further battle in the best position that they can. So a truly value of our community is long-term peace and security. Finally, I urge you to also clearly condemn the local hatred incidents and violence against the Jewish community and Israeli community here in Albany and El Cerrito. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, thank you for your time now and for meeting with me before. I am an Albany resident, homeowner, and parent. It is my preference that this city council not pass any resolution on this matter unless it is going to likewise engage on the Ukraine-Russia war, Haiti, or Syria. However, if you insist on passing something, I ask, like other people have spoken before, that you change the title and remove the word ceasefire. We have discussed with you, and you understood why the word ceasefire is particularly triggering for our community. There was a ceasefire on October 6th, and Hamas broke it with an unimaginable massacre. Please call it a path to long-term peace and security. Also, please don't compare innocent Israeli hostages like Fir and his 4-year-old brother to convicted murderers who are sitting in prison for their crimes. Their releases are not the same. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, yeah, so thank you again for this resolution. I appreciate the overall intent of it, that there be a ceasefire and that all human lives are precious. But I do want to point out how the perpetrator is hardly mentioned. It says, whereas over 30,000 Palestinians have perished. How did they perish? What happened? Who is the agent of them perishing? Did they just perish in thin air? Who is the evildoer who took away the lives of so many innocent people, so many innocent children? Who is deliberately letting 1 million people, half of whom are children, starve to death? This resolution needs to do more in explicitly stating who is responsible for these repulsive crimes. It's the state of Israel, founded on its racist ideology of Zionism, who is the evil perpetrator. It is Israel who is committing this genocide. It is Israel who does not view the life of a Palestinian as worth living, and this view didn't just form suddenly after October 7th. And our very own government here is backing Israel. So, may we see a future in which racist leaders, governments, and ideologies cease to exist. May we see a free Palestine. Thank you.
Please refrain from clapping. Thank you.
Could you include hissing, jeering in that? Can you stop the time, please?
Sorry. Please, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, refrain from showing any support or, sorry, please, those in the audience, please remain silent in all forums. I'll leave it at that.
Good evening. I'm a resident of El Cerrito, and I came out here tonight to support, or be here in support and in solidarity with the many and diverse residents of this city of Albany who have been calling for a permanent ceasefire. And I really urge you to pass this resolution despite it being so little, so late. For one, it doesn't name the genocide of Palestinians. It doesn't call for a permanent ceasefire, a lasting ceasefire. It also does not name Israel as an occupying force that has been oppressing Palestinians for many decades, long before October. Nonetheless, this resolution must pass. We must save lives. Even the UN Security Council finally passed some sort of ceasefire resolution this morning. Ceasefire now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
After Amber would be Tamiko P., Linda W., Somaia, number 3, and Sherry D.
Council members, thank you for your time. There can be no peace until there is a free Palestine. There can be no free Palestine until there is an end of the occupation. There can be no free Palestine until there's an end of the siege. And all of these must start with a ceasefire. Keep ceasefire in the title. Over the weekend, faith leaders from around the Bay Area joined for a pilgrimage, and one of the quotes that I heard that really stuck with my heart is that hope is like a bird singing about the dawn while it's still dark. And that was in reference to dreaming about a free South Africa, which at one point seemed unimaginable. And so now I invite those who care about peace and freedom to imagine and work for and fight for a free Palestine.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, I'm Tamiko Vanzella. I'm an Albany resident.
I think in this resolution, there are some words that I don't love, and there are some words that are missing, but overall, I do think we should pass it. I think it's right there in the title, ceasefire, stop the killing, and I hope that you can all shut out all this noise and focus on that. We just want the killing to stop.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for putting the ceasefire resolution on your agenda. I do urge you to call for a permanent ceasefire, an end to the illegal Israeli occupation, and an end to the genocide. Today's UN resolution is a joke. It's a 2-week pause on bombing just so people can starve to death instead. There is an imminent risk of famine, the intentional starvation of 2 million people, half of whom are children. The Israeli government's genocidal intent has been proven by their words and their actions for the past 6 months. Fear of a hypothetical genocide cannot and does not, will never justify an actual genocide. Palestinians are live streaming their own ethnic cleansing, and for every atrocity Zionists like to talk about, there are thousands of atrocities being committed by the IOF forces. They're bragging about their atrocities on social media, and they're able to do so with complete impunity because our government does nothing but reward them with more of our tax dollars. I don't want to be of a generation where our grandchildren look back and with puzzlement and shame because we failed to do what is so obviously right. Help our governments, help end our government's fueling of this inhumane war on children. Thank you.
Thank you for
What's
your
your first
comments.
name?
Sumaya.
Okay, so I need Linda, someone that just put the number 3, and Sherry. Please line up. Linda W, number 3, and Sherry D. Otherwise, we go to the next group.
Are you Linda?
Okay. Next group, Karen P, Amy New, SEPIDEH, Toby B, and YAHIA. Please line up. Thank you. Go ahead.
First of all, I ask the council to actively keep to your instructions. I am intimidated by people jeering in the corner, and I find that while I can hear that, perhaps the council cannot. I ask that you do not have any resolution at all. I think this is, to be honest, not really your business. Your business is Albany's business. My last point is that a lie spoken 1,000,000 times is still a lie. For example, claiming from this podium that the International Court of Justice declared that Israel is committing a genocide is a lie. All you need to do is Google it. It's not true. Genocide, and its definition certainly is well known by Jews, is the intentional eradication of an entire people. Either the Gazans are part of the Palestinians or they're not. You can't have it both ways. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Sherry. I'm a resident of El Cerrito, so I applaud you for grappling with this. They won't do it in El Cerrito. They don't have the courage at this point. I support this resolution, of course, with some reservations, and I've been tracking resolutions in other cities around the country, and noticing here tonight the messaging, it might be possible that you want to just do a separate Hamas resolution and strengthen the resolution you have so that you really do consider issues of genocide, issues of starvation, issues of occupation, issues of accountability, issues of Israeli complicity. So, because sometimes if you try to put too much together in one thing, it gets pretty watered down. But if you don't want to consider that, just pass this and keep the title. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
My name is Karen Platt. I've lived in Albany for more than 40 years. I was a teacher at Albany Middle School in the 80s, and I'm Jewish. And I strongly support this resolution. I think it's horrible to watch a genocide in progress right before our eyes. And the strongest thing that I can say is it's collective punishment, which is a war crime according to Article 33 of the 4th Geneva Convention.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Sapida. I am actually an El Cerrito resident.
And I just want to say I support this resolution. I have some reservation, but wholeheartedly, I think too little, too late, because today, 14 countries voted for a ceasefire in United Nations, and even US abstained. So you should consider that when you consider this resolution. No matter what these people are saying, the truth of the matter is you're too late. The whole world is saying enough is enough. Raping, anything that you see in the news, I don't want to repeat again what is happening in Palestine, in Gaza, and in West Bank. They keep having Hamas. Why West Bank they're killing people? Why in the West Bank they're arresting people? West Bank there is no Hamas. It's the Palestinian Authority. So it's a lie. It's about Hamas. Don't fall for it. Ask them why. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, I'm a resident here in Albany, and I'm originally from Egypt, which is neighbor for Palestine, Israel, and Lebanon. And I want to point out that Hamas was not there in 1967 when Israel occupied Palestine, in 1974 when Sinai in Egypt was occupied and part of Lebanon. Seeing the dead children every day break my heart. Some women are raped from just a couple of days. Finally, I want everyone to ask himself that what if it was your kid, your wife, or your mother? I ask for ceasefire and peace in the whole region. Thank you.
Are you Toby or what's your?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm missing Toby and Amy. And Mayor, after these, no more speaker cards.
My name's Toby Blame. I'm a resident of El Cerrito. I've attended one of your meetings before when it was much better attended for supporting ceasefire. I'm here today to beg of you City Council. It's not the perfect resolution, it's by far, but we need to get as many cities passing resolutions as fast as we can. I bring to all of you today the words of Aaron Bushnell, who is the 25-year-old American active duty airman who set fire to himself because he couldn't stand the U.S. complicity in genocide in Gaza. And think of this gentleman, 25 years old, who sacrificed his life to bring attention and expose the crime. I beg of you, his last words he posted on social media were, I'm paraphrasing it, many people ask themselves, what would we do in the time of slavery? What would we do in the time of Jim Crow? What would we do in the time of apartheid? You don't need to ask yourself, Americans or City Council now, because what you're doing today and every day answers that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
That's all the speaker cards I have.
If anyone in the room has not spoken, if you could fill out a speaker card and
I have an Amy. Is that you?
I really have no words when I'm hearing that the word ceasefire is triggering. In the history of humankind, when has calling for a ceasefire been triggering? When has been calling to not starve children been a problem? I am fasting. I look forward to breaking my fast. The people in Gaza are fasting, and they have to break their fast with grass or nothing. And this is not a famine that was, somehow, it is a man-made famine. The Israelis are going to the border and stopping the food from going through. They now said that UNRWA cannot go into into Gaza at all. And we have pulled our funding from UNRWA. So we are starving children. And the people that are worried about Hamas, how do you think those kids are going to grow up and feel towards not only Israel, but towards America? How short-sighted are we? What kind of humanity do we have when we can starve children and send our tax dollars to starve more children and bomb more mosques and houses and hospitals?
please refrain from.
Jay?
Hi, Jay, Albany resident. Please pass this resolution. It's not perfect, and it's late, but please pass it. Don't listen to those who seem to think that we shouldn't have a ceasefire. they're in some kind of genocidal mania. They shouldn't be listened to. Cooler heads need to prevail. Hopefully the US is starting to come around. They abstained today. They should have voted yes, but they abstained. The international pressure is building, and people are starving and dying every day. So pass the resolution. Don't listen to those who would who would tell you that this is somehow wrong. Yeah, ceasefire now.
Thank you, everyone in the council chamber. We're going to move to online speakers.
My name is Tomer. I'm an Israeli American living in the East Bay, the son of indigenous Jewish people of Israel. Israel and the majority of the Jewish community of the Bay Area want peace. The fact that you're not calling for peace is alarming. There are two combatants here in this war, one of which your resolution conspicuously omits: Hamas. Israel is fighting Hamas. Gaza is ruled by Hamas, full stop. The ceasefire language only helps Hamas. What will help the people of Gaza and Israel will be calling for peace, which can only be achieved by removing Hamas, an extremist totalitarian regime that says that condones using rape as a weapon of war, that calls for all women to go back into the kitchen, and wants to kill all Jews around the world, not just in Israel. Just as the international coalition came together to destroy ISIS, the same must be done to Hamas. You're whitewashing Hamas by leaving them out of the resolutions, just as bad as whitewashing the crimes of ISIS. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, I'm Musa Kara, the Council on American Islamic Relations, wishing everybody a blessed Ramadan. In the spirit of the holy month of Ramadan, the Israeli Heritage Minister recently said that the so-called month of Ramadan must be wiped out. Over 31,000 Palestinian civilians have been killed in Israeli attacks on Gaza since October 7th. That includes 25,000 women and children, which is 80% of the death toll. This is not a war on Hamas, but a war on the people of Gaza. Governor Gavin Newsom recently called for a ceasefire in an open letter to Californian Muslims and Arabs. Today, the UN Security Council resolution calling for an immediate and lasting ceasefire, 14-0. Joining the global call for ceasefire are those in Albany who have sounded the alarm on social media, written letters, spoken to their representatives, all too often to deafening silence. This is an opportunity for this council to amplify your community's call for a ceasefire. Right now, amidst Israel's brutal siege on Al-Shifa Hospital, there have been reports of executions, detentions, and sexual violence. It's critical for you to call for a ceasefire now and to heed the call of the people of Albany and the world. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Everyone, I do not see the need for Albany to pass a resolution on this complex matter, especially given that the city has already made a statement on this topic. However, if you insist to pass one, please make the following changes. 1, condemn Hamas, the terror organization, and call for its removal from power. 2, please rename the resolution for a call for peace versus a one-sided ceasefire. 3, denounce anti-Semitic and hateful acts that have occurred in our community. 4, do not make a comparison between Israeli hostages and prisoners who have committed crimes. And wish everyone a happy Purim and hope the Jews will win evil again. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Lee, and I'm an Albany resident. First, I care about Jewish lives and Palestinian lives. I have never cheered about the death of any innocent life. 30,000 Palestinians would still be alive if Hamas did not start this war. That is why it is so important to add removing Hamas from power in the resolution. And yes, I would love a permanent ceasefire, not a temporary one that only benefits terrorists as they regroup and rearm before they attack Israel over and over again, as they have so proudly vowed to do. As long as there is Hamas, no ceasefire will last. I'm also shocked that the resolution calls for the unconditional release of civilian prisoners. How can you compare one-year-old hostage Kfir Bibes to 22-year-old Ahmed Manasra, who was 14 years old when he went to Israeli prison for stabbing and attempting to murder 2 Israeli teens in 2016? There should be no strings attached to bring back people who were kidnapped. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Nurit, and I am Israeli and Albany resident for a long time. I want you to remember October 7th. Remember the children, women, elderly, and everyone who was kidnapped or brutally murdered. And also today, they are raped in Gaza. They were not killed during time of war. They were killed just for being in Israel. There was ceasefire on October 6th. Hamas broke it in early morning of the 7th. Clearly, any ceasefire with Hamas does not last more than 2 years. Hamas has it in their charter that they will destroy Israel and will kill all Jewish wherever they are. If an October 7 attack happened in the US, would you calling for ceasefire? You know, we would blow the crap out of the terrorists who started it, and it would be justified because it's war. Please include removing Hamas as part of the resolution. That's the only hope for lasting and practice in the region. Okay, Israel did not occupy Gaza for the last 20 years.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, my name is David, and I'm a very long time Albany resident. Firstly, I am disappointed this is something our local council spends so much time on, though it does make me curious if ceasefires for other conflicts with many more casualties are coming next. I would think that addressing other major wars is much more unifying than focusing on only Israel and Gaza. I'm sure Albany has many Ukrainians, Russians, Syrians, Yemens, Haitians that are equally distressed as Gazans and Israelis. Why aren't they being mentioned? And while I recognize that you all are being pressured to pass this resolution, I agree with the notion of changing its title. If your goal is long-term peace and security in the region, say it how it is. Change the title to be reflective of that. Instead of a call for a temporary ceasefire, make it a call for lasting peace. Really simple.
Thank you for your comments.
Elaine, please unmute yourself.
I'm at 45 seconds. Could I start at a minute, please? Hello?
Go ahead and speak.
I'm at 37 seconds.
Go
Can you reset?
Go ahead and make your comment.
Okay. Hamas broke the ceasefire in 2012, again in 2016, and again on October 6th. They have vowed to keep attacking Israel. A ceasefire will be used to rearm Hamas, which will mean more dead people. You should change the name of this resolution to Path to Peace, which is a much more realistic title since Hamas does not want peace.
If you have a little bit more, you have a little bit more time. Thank you for your comment.
Francesca, please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can I have my time back, please? Thank you. I just want to say that 127 children were killed per day in Auschwitz. It was about 220,000 children over 5 years. In Gaza, the average is 139 per day right now. And these statistics do not diminish the severity and evil of what happened to the Jews during the Holocaust. They're simply bringing to light the grave situation in Gaza. The hostages that people are mentioning make up 0.3% of the people in Gaza right now. That's not even 1%. That's less than half of 1%. What is fueling anti-Semitism is the murdering of civilian men, women, and children by the thousands under the banner of the Star of David, and then adamantly insisting that that is the totality of Judaism and thus inseparable from all Jews. Zionism is terrorism. Jewish safety and Palestinian liberation are intertwined. Please pass this ceasefire resolution. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Please unmute yourself when you see the message.
Hi, my name is Sadaf, and I am supporting this resolution. We are already too late. The horrific crimes that are being committed against the people of Palestine, especially the people of Gaza, are just too much. If you guys care to really find the truth, listen to the accounts of the people who are being evacuated from the hospital and the homes. Their family members are being murdered in front of them, and they are starving. They have no food and no water. Please pass a ceasefire resolution. It's already too late. We're the ones funding it, and we should be stopping it.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, my name is Wala Orikat, and I am a Palestinian American resident of El Cerrito. I support a resolution to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire. The suffering endured by innocent civilians on both sides is immeasurable, and the cycle of violence only perpetrates more pain and loss. Millions of people all over the world are calling for a ceasefire, and today 14 countries voted in favor at the UN Security Council. However, this call is a little too late. We've seen Israel kill over 32,000 Palestinians, injure over 74,000 Palestinians. They're starving to death over 1 million people, including 27 children who have already died. We cannot continue to watch this. Please vote for the resolution.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Lakin Sheldon. I'm a resident of Albany, and I'm here to advocate for a permanent ceasefire. I think you should pass this resolution. I've had numerous friends and family who've been directly affected by this genocide, but you don't have to know anybody personally to know that the slaughter of innocent children and civilians is absolutely wrong. You know, we have Zionists here arguing about the technicality of this word and that word, but nobody in their right mind should declare that our tax dollars be sent overseas to continue this massive slaughter. It's just ridiculous. And while their history is way off, all you have to do is Google Nakba. It's all there. It's so easy to find out. So these Zionists with their arguments, which have been debunked over and over, you got to pass this resolution. We can't keep killing people.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, everybody. My name is Russell Bates. I'm a Berkeley resident. I've been following and supporting the Palestine cause for the last 30 years. I'd like to see an unconditional worldwide ceasefire, one the Israeli lobby does not control, like they're controlling the president, the House, the Senate. It's a cult. It's a cult of death, and it needs to be stopped immediately. It's wrong, and it's hurting the world. Zionism is on its way out. The Tet Offensive in '68, the Gaza Offensive in '23. The Americans were out 7 years later. The Zionists will be out sooner or later. Pass this resolution, please. Stop the killing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, my name is Risa. I am a Berkeley resident, and I'm here in support of a ceasefire resolution in Albany. I personally have no familial ties within like Israel or Gaza, but as someone who has seen the videos of starving children, the killings of men, women, pregnant women, elderly in Gaza over the last 6 months, I know this isn't a complicated situation. I know anyone can see that this is a genocide, and calling for a ceasefire isn't a call for division or hatred. It is a call for humanity. So please, the city council members, please pass the ceasefire resolution. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mayor, that's all from online. We do have 2 public speakers in the audience.
Yep.
Go ahead, Dahlia. And next is Eileen.
Thank you so much, Council, for this opportunity. I know there is a lot of pressure to pass a ceasefire, as much as I wish I could ask you to stay focused on local business. So I will say, speaking for myself and anybody else in this room, the humanitarian cost is awful. Nobody wants this. This is abhorrent in anybody's book. It's tragic. It's absolutely tragic. The call for a ceasefire on the surface seems completely legitimate and reasonable. Who wouldn't want that? I would ask you to please understand the nuance here, that it has to be a ceasefire that protects safety on both sides, on all sides, that it has to be a ceasefire that removes Hamas and endorses Israel's right to exist as a nation at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Eileen or Elaine?
My name is Eileen Lee. I work in Albany. Hamas must be disarmed and removed from power for a lasting peace. If not, they will do what they promised on October 7th and continue slaughtering Jews. Today, they shot 11 rockets, not at soldiers in Gaza, but at civilians in Israel. Please add that to your resolution. Secondly, please call this a path to long-term peace and security. That's what we all want. And number 3, do not equate the innocent Israeli hostages who were kidnapped from their homes on October 7th. Don't equate them to convicted terrorists that are held in Israeli prisoners. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. My name's Henry. I'm an anti-Zionist Jew. I'm not going to all lives matter this BS. For the last 160 days, we've seen the unadulterated slaughter, an unequivocal slaughter of men, women, and children. For those claiming that there was a ceasefire on October 6th, let me remind you that 97% of water in Gaza was undrinkable. Undrinkable. Gaza has been declared the largest concentration camp for Palestinians worldwide. We have to put an end to this killing. We have to put a stop to it. The calls that a ceasefire is divisive on the surface level or even under it are just calls to continue violence. You must put a stop to it. My Jewish history tells me that I should be more apt to see the signs of dehumanization, the signs of genocide, of which are very apparent. Ceasefire now.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi there. My name is Talia. I'm a resident of Albany. I understand that you feel that this resolution is balanced and that it addresses the hearts of many in the community. At least that's what you told me when we met in person. I also understand that hard work did and was put into drafting this resolution. And as I've said, and as many have said, it is not perfect. While many here and everywhere have claimed that they want peace, they still spew hateful sentiments toward Israel and Jews. It is those voices that should be silenced. I have yet to hear anyone speak disparagingly about any citizen of Gaza. All decent and reasonable people want a ceasefire, but that cannot be done without eliminating Hamas and releasing the hostages. The resolution's omission of any reference to Hamas, the terrorist group who began this conflict, is shocking. If peace is truly what everyone wants, and everyone has claimed it, then the title of this resolution should absolutely include that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
That's it. Oh, I'm sorry.
I appreciate the resolution. My request is, I would like to see added to it that the U.S. government no longer stops providing weapons and money for weapons that Israel is using to kill Palestinians. As a Jew, I am embarrassed and actually horrified by what is happening right now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
That's all.
With that, we will close public comments. I want to thank everyone who has provided comments today, both online and in person, and over the past few months. I recognize that for many of you in the room, this may not have been a comfortable conversation, but I applaud the civility by which this meeting has occurred. I also recognize that there were moments in which applause or dissent was voiced, but I appreciate that those who were doing that were able to come back to our requested standards of kind of how we would run this in our decorum. I have often looked to this council and often said that as the one presiding over the meeting that I would prefer to go last in discussing things. I do have a few things that I would like to say before we get into conversation. I would like to address some of the comments that were raised by members of the public. And Aaron, please feel free to interject as you see fit. In particular, sorry, I'm going through my notes here. There has been a lot of call for a permanent ceasefire. And I think that is something that we, in discussions with many people and between ourselves, we thought about as well. Our primary concern about including permanent with ceasefire, as opposed to in the language that we have, which calls for an immediate bilateral ceasefire. And let me read the exact phrasing. Let me see in the resolution. It says, and negotiation of a permanent, just solution to the conflict that results in lasting prosperity for all by affirming all parties' right to self-determination and peaceful coexistence. Our recognition is that a ceasefire is needed now. Hostility needs to end now, without it necessarily being reliant on the long-term ceasefire or peaceful existence of the Palestinians and the Israelis in Gaza and in the West Bank. We did not want to make that a condition of getting to the point where an end of the hostilities as they are going on now, and that the humanitarian aid can begin to flow, and that through a process, we are not experts in this field, but just understanding that a process would be had, that we would hope that there would be self-determination and two governments working together to find a peaceful long-term solution. So that was one of the items I wanted to raise, just explanation of the language, just because I recognize that for the other council members up here, just why we didn't include the word permanent. Let's see. And then the other one I would say is, I think there was a lot of debate on the title of the resolution. And in the end, we chose to bring forth to this council, the phrasing is there, but I believe that is an area which I know Aaron and I both share the opinion that at the dais it's very hard to carefully craft language, but that was one point where we had quite a few conversations. Aaron, are there any things that you might want to convey to the other council members in terms of things that the members of the public raised about language or terminology?
A couple, and thank you for addressing some of that. I think like you mentioned, we did discuss, what do we call this, which all gets at what are we trying to say and how are we trying to say it. And I think that it was my opinion that we had to keep it calling as a resolution calling for ceasefires. That was our intention. That was the understood phrase that I think was clear to us as saying that there is something very wrong happening now, and it needs to stop, and too many people are dying, and there needs to be a halt to that. And that's what I think ceasefire means, and that's why it's in the title of that. I would also say that, just as there are many things that in the many hours John and I discussed this, that we think about this issue, not all of which we put in this resolution. Just as this resolution does not include everything that I or John or anyone in the city wants to say about this, our title doesn't include everything that happens in the resolution. And in fact, I'd say if anyone's just focusing on the title, it's important to read the entire thing. That's why we wrote it. That's why we put so much effort into every one of those words, and why I spent so long in front of my computer looking at them. All of them are important, and I think they do address a lot of the things people said, and including that want for a permanent peace, which we do have in that clause. I think, as some of the other council members know, I am very obsessive about writing things well, and that was a consistent difficulty here because there is the simplest and easiest and best expressed way to write things was not always the way that we had to express it to be over clear about what we were trying to say. And that's where we ended up. And I sincerely believe we got to the points we needed to and expressed the intention that we expressed. And for more detail, the memo does exist to elucidate some of that and spell out those intents clearly.
I will take an opportunity now to go more into, again, I normally choose to go at the end, but I would prefer, if I may, to use the mayor's discretion to make a statement. I think through the formation of this ad hoc committee, and apologize to everyone in the room, I am going to read from some text that I wrote because I am recovering still from a cold, and even in my best times, I will forget points that I mean to say. So, through the formation of the ad hoc committee, I've learned and grown so much. Many have shared truly personal lived experiences that have given me a deeper understanding and appreciation of the pain, fear, anxiety, and grief each of you has. And I think, those who ask us, why we as the council taking this on, it's because that is such a visceral thing in our community that is occurring. And I'll go back to my script now. And you've opened up about your hopes and dreams, and I appreciate that as well. As this process started, I did not see a bilateral ceasefire as something that would divide our community, because I felt we were already a divided community, one in which civil discourse could not occur, one in which peaceful marches and rallies and protests could not occur without violence, one in which city council meetings across the Bay Area have either ended early or ended none have gone to the extent of violence, but have not been a meeting that people felt comfortable being in or felt safe being in. We are a community where, again, on January 6th, our rally, a peaceful rally, the organizers who intended to have a peaceful rally did not end peacefully. Where UC Berkeley continuously has protests that turn violent. These are all events that are not, that are part of us. We as part of Albany, we as part of the East Bay region, we as the San Francisco Bay Area, we are experiencing. And I say this because as council members, heated discussions are part of what happens when you have a contentious item that's on a docket, on an agenda. Heated discussions about tangible things that our community can help shape and control can lead to compromise, understanding, and a better city. The wounds from those heated discussions will heal over time. But that is for tangible things that we as a city control. And so for those of you in the room who say, we as the council should stay focused on things that are local, I agree. And we said this, or I said this on March 4th when I brought the question to the council about forming an ad hoc committee. And I mentioned then that we as a council are not prone to doing this. We are not prone to taking on things that are outside of our borders, and more importantly, are not something that we have a tangible effect upon. And I say that because when we take on topics like this, we take on topics where we can form a resolution, and that resolution has no tangible impact. I say all of that, and yet I brought forth the request to form an ad hoc committee. And I brought forth with Aaron, many thanks to Aaron, Councilmember Tiedemann, this resolution, because I believe while this resolution does not have the tangible effect of frankly influencing anyone in the US government, anyone in Israel, or anyone in Hamas, it does raise the common voice that we have heard consistently in our community that we want peace. We want a long-term peace. And I understand in many ways the word ceasefire is a charged word. As many have said, there was a ceasefire on October 6th, and it wasn't the first of many ceasefires. So, one of the phrases that I use that I believe in is that, professionally in my work and in my work on a council, is you can only move at the speed of trust. And that trust is really in the understanding that we as a community can come together and have conversations. And I want to applaud everyone who attended today and everyone who attended online today. While it wasn't a comparable conversation, and while there are maybe things that some said that you don't agree with or you do not believe, people were able to voice their vantage point and their lived experiences. And to me, that was one of my major purposes for bringing forth the potential of having an ad hoc committee, to have the conversations that Aaron and I had with the community, to have the ability to start to build some bridges in this community. I say this because I also recognize that that passing of this resolution has the ability of breaking some of those bonds. But I hope we as a community are strong enough to recognize in each other that we have all a desire for peace. I really appreciate those who came forward saying a clear path to peace or a path to peace. I think that is very accurate in the sentiment that I've heard from everyone that I have talked with. And so with that, I will say, I will open that up to conversation with other council members. If they would like to comment on anything, you do not have to, but I will open that up.
I'll take my traditional poll position. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Tiedemann. I'm very grateful that you wrote this, that you took the time and did the work. I think that the goals that you set are right on. But I appreciate the explication of that. But once I read the memo, that was certainly in line with my goals. Like yourself, I have some things I want to read. Two factors incline me to the resolution. One is the insufficient food supply that is occurring and has been occurring. And the other is that the United States is the main supplier of weapons to Israel and the main source of diplomatic support. And so unlike many other wars in the world, that gives us a particular responsibility in this situation. In its brief regarding its most recent analysis of the situation in Gaza, issued March 18th, the International Food Security Phase Classification, the IPC, found almost 700,000 people experiencing catastrophic food insecurity. It projects this will rise to 1.1 million, which is half the population in the next few months. Catastrophe is defined as even when using all of their coping strategies, people have almost no food and cannot support their basic needs. Starvation, death, destitution, and extremely critical acute malnutrition levels are evident. The brief states, the IPC Acute Food Insecurity Analysis conducted in December 2023 warned of a risk that famine may occur by the end of May 2024 if an immediate cessation of hostilities and sustained access for the provision of essential supplies and services to the population did not take place. Since then, the conditions necessary to prevent famine have not been met, and the latest evidence confirms that famine is imminent in the northern governorates and projected to occur any time between mid-March and May of 2024. The southern governorates, which is the rest of Gaza, are classified in IPC Phase 4 emergency. However, in a worst-case scenario, these governorates face a risk of famine through July 2024. This means without a ceasefire, it is not possible to get sufficient food to people in Gaza to prevent famine. There were choices made that created this situation. The IPC defines famine as at least 20% of households in an area are experiencing catastrophic food insecurity, IPC 5, meaning these households are facing an extreme lack of food. At least 30% of children are suffering from acute malnutrition. At least 2 per 10,000 people are dying each day. IPC's population tracking tool indicates the only people on the planet experiencing catastrophic food insecurity currently are in Gaza. A majority in the northern area, about a third in the center, and a quarter in the south. Under the IPC system, a famine occurs when at least 70% of the people in an area are experiencing catastrophic food insecurity. That is what is projected for the northern governorate. As reported by a number of mainstream news organizations, including Reuters and NPR, various entities such as the World Bank and the UN have independently estimated from satellite imagery that the number of buildings destroyed or damaging is approaching 100,000. For scale, there are around 5,000 buildings in Albany. The area of Gaza is equal to that of the cities from Albany through San Leandro, except 3 times as many people live there. Imagine if none of us can leave this area, food supply has been cut below sustenance levels, and buildings are being progressively destroyed in all parts. The report that more than 30,000 people have been killed in Gaza is unverified, but given the destruction, that number seems reasonable. This situation has elicited hate crimes against people in our area. Most dramatically, the felonies with hate crime allegations against a pro-Israeli counter-protester by a pro-Palestinian protester in El Cerrito at a protest that commenced in Albany. I do have some adjustments I would like to request to the resolution. I have provided that file to the city clerk. I hope that she's able to bring it up so that we can go through it. I don't believe that they're dramatic. I don't know if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's getting fired up. Thank you, Mayor Mickey, Councilmember Tiedemann, for your efforts. Thank you, Councilmember Jordan, for your prepared statement. Just say on my end right now, I'm not too particularly interested in getting to the nuances of language or altering language. I've been very clear from the jump that we do have individual agency using our positionality and our influence and our connectedness to other and local power and state and federal power to communicate directly with them and to encourage our constituents to also reach out. But I've also made it very clear that though I it wouldn't be the one to bring a resolution to the table, I would still fully support a resolution nonetheless. I don't want to make this about our feelings and what we think, what we observe, and our opinion. around the matter, because as Mayor Mickey alluded to, and as I've also unequivocally stated numerous times, we are not the arbiters of peace negotiations, but we do have the opportunity to raise to the surface the necessity to call out what is happening and what has happened. And that it is inclusive of the atrocity that happened on October 7th and the atrocities that have happened since then, but that's also inclusive of the various atrocities that have happened predated to October 7th. And again, that's not a particular thing that I think we need to get detailed about when we are considering a resolution. And so I'll leave it there in terms of what I would like to say with respect to our positionality on council, but I do want to reframe it and acknowledge everyone that is here today, that has been coming to our meetings, that have been emailing us, that this does speak to the necessity of our community needing to find ways to come together, to find ways in which we can also have coexistence of lived and valid truth. As Mayor Mickey also highlighted, this is a local issue, but I don't think it stops at just passing a resolution. I think this maybe speaks to an opportunity to have events, activities in our local spaces, our community center, where we highlight and showcase and center the identities that we see right here in this room right now. That what we're hearing and what we're experiencing right now definitely calls out the unfortunate issue of lack of accountability of maybe those in leadership in the past who haven't recognized this, that we have a beautiful and diverse community here in Albany, and we have an opportunity to center those many identities through different cultural events, different opportunities, whatever that may look like. And I think that's an opportunity for us as council, us as your elected, to further listen to you beyond just this meeting. And so I would highly encourage folks to keep doing so. I also just want to acknowledge that I've been hearing like a little tiny human babble out there in the hallway. And I just want to say, I think that's hella dope that, folks are getting people in their family involved in local politics, being aware, no matter what side of the issue or where along the spectrum of a stakeholder you are in this. I think this also paramountly speaks to the absolute need of our households in this community to be more civically engaged and to do our part to, hold city council accountable to the things you want to see and the things that we need in this community. And I would hope that many of you continue to come to our future meetings and see how we're holding ourselves accountable to local issues, local concerns. You may have heard in the previous meeting some of the things I have suggested for future agenda items, ranging from a equal pay ordinance to ways in which we can acknowledge our superintendent who had recently passed away. And so we need you here constantly. We need you here to keep telling us what you want and what you expect. And again, I think this is a way in which we could still look past what happens today, whether folks agree or don't agree with the ultimate language of the resolution. And I know Preston's just dying to let us know and run that down on us. But I really do hope, I sincerely hope that many of you who have been emailing and have been coming to the meeting continue to do so. And as some of you in this space today are aware, like I have been trying my best to email everyone back, whether you agree with me or not. I've been trying to be very intentful about that because I do appreciate people's feedback and I appreciate the level of civic engagement that we all are having. Again, I just want to take that opportunity to frame it for the folks that are here in the space right now, and that you're still here. You gave your public comment, but you're still here, still civically engaged. And I do highly encourage that after this, you post about it, you share your thoughts, you share your opinions, because that's part of the democratic process. That's part of seeing what the outcome can be. That's part of challenging the status quo. That's part of challenging how your elected representatives choose to represent you. And I just want to say I thoroughly do appreciate everyone being here. Lastly, I just want to also highlight and acknowledge, though, that since October 7th, particularly, I know history in itself is quite complex and challenging to unpack, especially if you're not of someone who's directly involved in those spaces. Similarly, how I don't expect people to understand the complexity of my own indigeneity connected to Mexico. But I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that specifically since October 7th, there has been a clear concern and presence of folks voicing their hurts and their pain around anything that pertains to anti-Muslim, anti-Arab, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic rhetoric and behavior and action. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed and unequivocally stated by everyone on council, that those are acts that need to be fully acknowledged as something we don't condone and should never condone, and that any form of that, especially when folks feel like they are under direct danger or intimidation of violence, that be addressed. And again, that's a way for us to move forward and look beyond just a ceasefire resolution, but what can we do in our own community? What do you want us to see us do? What do you want City Council to do to leverage our power to do so? Just close it out with saying thank you, everyone, for being here and providing your public comments and your opinions, and see how we take that into account as we move forward. But would love to hear what Councilmember Jordan has to say.
I don't have an email from you.
You don't have it? Uh-oh, that's not good. Does somebody have a drive? All right, well, it's simple enough. I think I can explain. So, what? I can't, if somebody gives me the Wi-Fi password. I keep Wi-Fi off so that
Mayor, while we troubleshoot this, can I make some comments?
Yes.
Thank you. So thank you to the rest of the council for engaging on this and for all of your thoughts, and especially thank you to everybody here for the discussion and the civility. I know, as the mayor mentioned, it has been difficult, it's tense, but I want to acknowledge that there are many communities that could not have gotten through this sort of meeting or this sort of conversation without much, much, much more hostility, and there are many who couldn't really get through the meeting. And especially, I've shared this with members of other elected offices in other cities, that at the meeting when we established the ad hoc, we bookended our meeting with 2 items that had to do with this, and we're able to have a robust discussion about sidewalks in between. There are many city councils that could not do that, and I am very proud of our community that we have not boiled over in a way that makes it impossible for us to have those discussions or even this discussion. I think there are also councils that would struggle to be even always 100% respectful and have a good discussion with each other on the dais. So I am, as I am always, very appreciative that we have a council that speaks its conscience and works together and has a tremendous amount of respect for one another, even if we do have differences of opinion on many things. To echo something that the other council members and the mayor have said, this issue has become a local one. I think it's obvious to anyone who's been attending our meetings or the meetings of any neighboring cities This is an issue that is present in our community that is causing harm, and it was simply put not working to have it be only something that we could be spoken at about and could not respond to. That is all that was happening before this because it was not on our agenda, and we cannot discuss things substantively when it is not on our agenda. So this was a way for us to actually meet it head on and talk about what was happening in the community and the divisions and try and take some steps to recognize and heal that. I think that, as we've stated, there are a lot of issues we can't solve. And I would say no one is more aware of the limits of their power than a local elected and a city council person. We know exactly what we can and cannot do. And we are not going to single-handedly solve this crisis. As the mayor said, it may have little impact on even our own higher elected officials, as much as I wish it would. And even on the local level, it won't do everything to address everything our community is feeling. But instead, it's taking the first or one of the first steps. And the subsequent steps are not wholly ones that the city government can or even should always lead. There is work in our community and work to address everything that's been brought up as part of this that we simply cannot do as the city council or as the city. It is a social issue that we will all have to deal with. And I think a big part of that is addressing the hostility we feel for one another and the ways we paint each other. As I've mentioned to the mayor in our meetings, this has been a difficult issue to deal with and a saddening and a frustrating one for a lot of reasons. I think one of those is that the experience of painting each other in the least flattering light we can. Even before we were talking about this resolution, I have been called not a real Jew because of positions I've taken on it. And even more disturbing was in previous discussions we've had about this in the council, I've heard people heckling commenters, dismissing their lived experience of what they've experienced as Jews who've experienced anti-Semitism, as Palestinians and Arabs or Muslims of what they've experienced and the hatred they've experienced. And I think that's one of the most saddening parts of this process and something we have to address, and something that this resolution alone won't address, and that it can't. We've tried, and we've put language in there that tries to go some of that way. But as I mentioned in the memo, we have to do more to deal with hostility we feel towards each other, especially on painting each other with these broad brushes. My experience of my religion is not everyone else's experience. Just as what some of my opponents on some issues may say is not representative of all of them. We cannot paint members of our own group as all the same, and we cannot paint members of groups we disagree with as 100% the same. I think it does a disservice to all of us and lowers the level of our discussion on important issues like this. So I think this resolution goes a long way to doing something about all of that. It does not go all the way. It cannot. It cannot solve these issues, but it can be a step towards it. And I appreciate the council, and I appreciate everybody who had a part in giving us feedback on that and who came to speak to us about it here in meetings or in past meetings. With that, I think I'm done.
Thank you. So the first change I'm suggesting is that two of the findings really seem like resolves to me, that Albany condemns prejudice against people who are perceived as being members of groups that have ancestry in the region one way or the other, and that Albany reaffirms the right to peacefully gather. So I'm merely suggesting moving those to the resolve from the findings. And then I heard the comments about switching over to active voice to identify those entities that are doing the killing and to update the death toll. So in the first case, it specifically replaces and says that 1,200 citizens of Israel and others were killed by Hamas, and over 200 more have been killed since then, and that the killing is continuing, and then does the same for the Palestinians and Gazans who've been killed. And it recognized that our nation is the main supplier of weapons and diplomatic support for Israel, which to me is, as I said, one of the two reasons I am motivated to this. And I added one finding which motivates the resolves against prejudice, condemning prejudice, and reaffirming the right to peacefully protest, which regards the attack on pro-Israel counter-protesters that occurred in El Cerrito on January 6th, and specifically notes that one pro-Palestine protester perpetrated the attack and is now charged with 3 felonies with special hate crime allegations, which is the sort of most formal and recognized, is the most formal.
Please. Please allow counsel to have conversation.
Which is the most formal matter of prejudice that has occurred in the area to my knowledge. And this language is from the Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department press release regarding what the charges are. And so in the green is the findings that have been brought down from above and made resolves. And I don't recall if there's any further changes. City Clerk, if you scroll to the bottom. Oh, yes. I'm not in support of sending this resolution outside of this country. For me, the target of this resolution is our leaders in the United States, given our nation's support for Israel in the ways that I've described. I don't think it's in the constitutional spirit, based on decisions been made by the courts, for us to be sending resolutions to leaders of other countries. On any of that, I welcome. On any of this, I welcome your thoughts as to why.
I think the movement of the two whereas statements to being, be it further resolved, I don't necessarily have a problem with that as one of the authors. I will say that Aaron has been super helpful in me understanding where usually you put whereases and where you put therefore statements.
On moving those to the more active clauses, I see the argument. I think they were in the whereases versus the therefore be it resolved clauses, as they were less the active thing that we were calling for and more the sort of background or things that would be, if not obvious, sort of already settled fact to some extent, that, you know, we stand against prejudice in many forms. I see the argument, and I see the argument.
I will add one item, which is in both your languages to the City Clerk, if we could pause for us, the two whereas, which killings continue to increase. There is a whereas, a few statements below that says, whereas millions of lives are at imminent risk for continued hostilities and due to a lack of food and medical care. We felt that kind of covered the fact. So in one essence, we were trying to state what happened on October 7th, what has occurred since. I do think that there is the ability to add in language to the effect that and 200 more since. Since, October 7th was one event, and then the events that have happened since. There have been a quantifiable number of people who have been killed in Israel as well. So I think that I could see.
If I could add on that, yes, I would echo what the mayor said. I think that clause down there was trying to get at that. And I'll note that I think one of the difficult parts of writing this was numbers, was that in our meetings there were people on all sides of the issue who wanted more numbers, and there were people on all sides of the issue who wanted fewer numbers. And also finding numbers that are agreed upon gets difficult quite fast, is what I found. So that was the thought for having these, is it felt that something needed to be quantified. And like the mayor said, one of those is specifying the numbers on one day, and one is specifying the numbers since, and then another is saying that there are more lives at risk. I would say I prefer how we wrote it originally on that.
Okay, noting I added just one number.
Yes.
And you know me, I like numbers.
I think, sorry, just.
Yeah, sure.
I think one of the things that was conveyed to us through that conversation is that one of the horrors of war is that you may never know the true number. And so any number you list is always going to be, who knows what the plus and minus on that is. Not to say that we shouldn't include it, but just that was one of the other conversations about trying to limit the number of numbers that we added. But I do think the point that was made by some of the members of the public, and the point that you're trying to make, I believe, is just that there were additional deaths after October 7th, since we only list October 7th. So.
Right, I'm just trying to make it symmetric, essentially. And thank you for the clarification, certainly for that additional language of the killings continue to increase to be removed. Probably the bigger issue is the switch from passive to active voice. So again, having worked with you and appreciate your skill, and particularly going over my writing when we work together, I would imagine you thought about passive voice versus active voice on those, and so there's probably maybe some thinking there. So I don't know if you'd be willing to explicate on that or not.
Sure, and I'll say I get the frustration there, as I've probably given notes to you, of we should always strive for the active voice in good writing. I think the overall idea there were a lot of things we don't necessarily address in this resolution. And I recognize that there's folks who want us to address more of them and folks that want us to address less of them. I think the point, one of the things that we talked about in writing is that there are issues that we can or cannot talk about here that open a long and sort of bottomless argument that we could try and address, or we can focus on the pain and suffering that is being experienced rather than trying to spell out each part of that. And I get that that does not fulfill the hopes of everyone. But it felt like the thing that got to our intent of recognizing the crisis without focusing on every part of it and how it could be expressed and how it could be disagreed with, and who we wanted to identify or not. So I'll leave it at that unless the mayor wants to add anything on that.
I think you summed that up well.
Yeah, I mean, I heard among the comments from those who both support moving forward with this and not, that the passive voice was opposed. And so I do prefer actually naming the parties, because otherwise it's akin to a natural disaster, the way it reads currently. So that would be my preference. We'll see where it goes. City Clerk, if you could remove which killings continue to increase.
Councilmember Lopez, were you about to?
Yeah, in the section in which the January 6th protest was mentioned.
Sorry, public comment is closed at this point.
I do have a couple concerns there. One, that it's framed as pro-Palestine protest, when to my knowledge how it was publicized was as a ceasefire rally. But two, I think we as a council can absolutely condemn any acts of hate towards any specific group. What I do worry about is the rabbit hole that whereas statement could potentially drive us towards. Just speaking as someone who has been system impacted, and the potentiality of a whole city making a statement towards you, I believe in innocent until proven guilty. I know the videos.
That is your final warning. I will ask you to be escorted out of the room if you cannot maintain silence.
I do know there's videos surfacing around that clearly does show hateful acts that did occur, and I believe that's something we need to let our justice system handle accordingly and properly, without city making any particular statement around that. I don't know, and I think this is where I also would defer to our city attorney, if including a statement like that would put us in any type of legal situation with the accused.
There's no issue with including that statement. It's a policy decision for the council.
I think this whereas clause that we're on right now, I think falls into one of those categories where Aaron and I had many discussions about. And I think the one thing that we came to realize in our conversations with members of the public was their lived experiences of that day's events were not always the same. And I think there are things that we know, and we can absolutely say, the police have arrested this person on charges of these things. But I would say that based on the discussions that I heard and the lived experience of many people, is that while the violence and the physical assault, one person has been arrested on those charges, it was not only one person or one side that was, I don't want to say violent, but I would not say that the disagreements that were happening, or that the conversations that we're having, or the animated discussions, or however you want to describe we're having, were solely one-sided, or at least that they weren't perceived as solely one-sided. And so I worry that the statement as written, at least, is very divisive, versus saying something to the effect of what I mentioned earlier, where what was intended to be a peaceful rally and protest turned violent. Because for some, it was violent because they were verbally assaulted as they tried to leave a restroom while holding a sign. They weren't physically assaulted, but they were verbally assaulted and intimidated. For others, and in the example as written here, I do not know the entire story. I have heard different sides of the story, but in the end, there was a person who took a flag, someone was assaulted, and that flag was attempted to be burned. And so that one, I think there's more documentation of, but there are other stories and other lived experiences that I don't believe this encapsulates. And that's why I have generally kept it to that there generally was a level of violence and intimidation that was occurring that day, which is not in keeping with us as Albany and our goals and our strides. And I understand as a community, as a person, you don't always meet those goals or morals that you try and set for yourself. But I felt that this was one that truly just went beyond what happened. And I think, again, this is why I think all those, and I truly appreciate the time that people have spent in talking with us, because in hearing those shared experiences, I've learned so much more, and I recognize that I have so much more to learn, but I recognize that we were super cautious in what we wrote in here because of that.
Just to briefly add to that, I think that gets to something I was saying earlier of, I think one of the things we ran into in writing is that there are things that could be in here that start to become a point of disagreement about the facts of the state of play, rather than what we're trying to say about a statement of our values. And what the mayor was mentioning is a good example of that, of, you know, what people are saying about what happened at that protest match up 80%, and then there's divergences. And so I think we made a lot of decisions in a lot of this language to try and focus it on the statement of values rather than the points that could individually then be a point of just going down the rabbit hole of, I disagree about the statement of fact, that the facts are disagreed on. And I think, you know, that's a problem in even our normal discussions about normal items we deal with, and it's especially an issue in this one. So I think that was a big reason there, and why we stuck with the sort of larger statement that you've moved down to a more active clause about that people should be able to say what they want and no one should be attacked or experience hatred or anything like that.
Before you, just before you say anything,
Sure.
That being said, I'm not opposed to necessarily having a whereas acknowledging that January 6th happened, right? That is a fact. It is, and this is where we get into this whole how do we write the language, but like acknowledging that January 6th happened, acknowledging, you know, we mentioned particularly the violence and intimidation that has been put upon elected officials, and not even necessarily talking about our elected officials. Actually, I think in our community, I personally have not received any of that. There have been heated discussions and there have been very pointed comments, but that is different than going after someone personally or going after someone's family, right? So I do want to acknowledge that. So having a whereas that we acknowledge January 6th and we acknowledge the greater instability kind of to have these peaceful protests in the Bay Area, I think I would be comfortable with. It would be much more explicit than the whereas that you move to be further resolved. Mm-hmm. I'm comfortable having that, but it is about how you write that language to be sensitive to the fact that we don't want it to be a debate about everyone's telling someone that their lived experience wasn't their lived experience, I guess is what I would say.
I appreciate your deliberation and thoughts, and I would ask City Clerk to remove that whereas if she would. I appreciate your openness to including something, but to the point of not trying to really write in detail here. I mean, I'm obviously pushing the envelope with what I'm doing as it is.
May I offer a change to your now therefore be it resolved? Then?
Sure, yeah.
The City of Albany condemns the violence that occurred on January 6th of this year. And we could, so we'd remove all that up to on January 6th. In El Cerrito, I think we would add at the end.
Yeah, I guess. No, I don't mind that. I'm trepidatious about, I have trepidation about including in El Cerrito, because it's
Okay.
not clear to me that it was
fine.
only in El Cerrito.
Yep.
Because you raised the point of various things happened that day, and I would guess, from what you've heard, they didn't all happen in El Cerrito.
Correct.
I think we do need to say on January 6th of this year, something about occurred at the protest and counter-protest on January 6th. Otherwise,
Yeah.
there's no findings, so nobody's going to even know what we're talking about. They're going to think we're talking about 2021.
For this year,
So it could just be occurred at the protest and counter-protest on January 6th,
we're at the ceasefire.
at the ceasefire
protest and
protest.
counter-protest.
Yeah.
Might I also suggest the addition after violence to state the violence and hostilities, because folks, though they may not have felt or endured any specific type of physical violence or verbal, we've have heard and we have seen many emails where folks have expressed that they've endured a certain level of hostility. I think that's worth acknowledging in this statement.
Thank you. And I think we already reached consensus on those two findings being moved to resolve. And so I think the last thing is whether or not this gets sent to leaders in other countries.
So this again comes to, I'm sorry. I'll also take off my mask. I think this harkens back to our attempt here was to ask really all sides to come to the table with a good faith effort. And for this to be a document that was simply being sent to our U.S. representatives meant that it could be inferred that our intent was only for it to be for the U.S. to pressure Israel, as opposed to the U.S. through the UN using pressure to get all the nations to work together to get everyone who is a party to this conversation about finding an end to the hostilities to the table in good faith. We understand that Israeli government doesn't have to listen to us and probably won't listen to us. We understand that the Hamas leadership, well, I'm not even sure where we would mail that to, but you know, we list these other groups, Qatar and Iran, because Iran and Qatar are the two countries that are working, my understanding, with Hamas on the other side of the table to come to some form of end to the hostilities. And so we are trying to pretty much say, we would like this resolution to be sent to everyone so that everyone understands the pain and suffering that our community is going through, that is really being enacted by the fact that both sides are not coming to an agreement on an end to the hostilities. I totally understand your point, though, that they may not listen to anything that we write, or that it's not really in our purview. But
Yeah, it's more that. It's not that they won't listen. I mean, I think that's the probability that they will listen is de minimis, is a word used in risk assessment in my world, which means, you know, so negligible is not even worth thinking about.
I will also add one other thing that are be further resolved. Before we added yours, so let's just be clear.
Yeah.
We're put in kind of order of what we saw as the most actionable items we as city council members, we as a community can do. So the first further resolved was, what can we as a community do? The next was kind of what we hope for, and then who is this sent to? And I think who it was sent to is the one that I would just say they were put in order of where we saw we had the most impact.
Local to remote. Yeah.
To reiterate and echo that point, you know, like I've mentioned a couple of times, we had the two intents we were trying to get to, and this clause, I don't think is 100% necessary to either of them. It is sort of standard. It's, many of the other resolutions that other cities have passed have a list of usually American elected officials. That also includes a lot of local ones that we thought, there may not be a ton of utility to sending it to them. But was also the one that, in the process of editing, I had very little problem editing this clause because a lot of what we were trying to do was recognize more what people are feeling, get more of what gets across the intent, and nothing that we changed in this clause, to me, really affected getting across the intent and making that core statement of values, which was the goal.
Yes, but sending this outside of the country is more than just about the feelings of the intent. It's an actual formal act that I'm not comfortable with in terms of the role of the city. I mean, the reason I support this is because our nation's government is involved in one side of this, and I want to pressure our nation's leaders to do something differently. And to me, that's the appropriate remit of this body. I'm not in this to try to pressure, from my position here, to pressure leaders of governments of other nations and other bodies to do something. That is beyond, for me, that is beyond my remit.
I am inclined to leave that where that be it further resolved as is.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would agree with that. I get the worry. I very much do. But I'm comfortable with it.
All right, well, I guess I'll make a motion.
We did not discuss the additional language about because the U.S. provides weapons and as a statement.
Mm-hmm.
So just want to make sure, because that is a change, and that that is probably one of the whereases that went through many iterations.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this, whereas, and the language you've added is a great example of something I think I mentioned earlier around, I would love to write everything as simply and clearly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Often that was not possible with this resolution. I think the simplest and clearest way in a lot of ways that is in the good resolution language to me was saying this clause in the simple way of America is uniquely situated. And that encapsulates a lot of things. It's a choice of whether we spell it out or not, but I think it is not to have it still as saying that America is uniquely involved and able to affect things here is not saying that there's not this going on, and I think acknowledges it in some way in that we are uniquely qualified because we are a very strong diplomatic link with Israel, and because we are supplying a great deal of weapons and material support to them. So the goal is not to not acknowledge that. It is to acknowledge that and much more by having it as we are uniquely qualified in many different ways.
And just to maybe focus on that a little bit, is that in the language as written, you specifically call out Israel, but the reality is our nation has also relationships with other countries in the area who could be doing more to provide humanitarian. They could be doing more to allow Palestinians a place to move to safety while the conflict is going on. And so really by not calling out Israel, we're saying, yes, we have influence on Israel, but we also have influence on other countries in the region. And we have other methods of providing influence to try and secure an end to the hostilities and really the humanitarian crisis. And so, again, there was a lot of time spent on when and where we call out Israel and Hamas, essentially, in this resolution.
I'll just chime in my 2 cents really quick here is when I seen the original statement, I think I had very similar concerns as you, Preston, or Councilmember Jordan. But, you know, not just coming from the hyper-progressive in me, wanting accountability, but I think it's also important, you know, as an elected to like separate that my personal bias and experience and acknowledge, and I think Councilmember Tiedemann, you hit the nail on the head there with, you know, looking for a statement that more or less encapsulates it all. Because I was going back and reading it on my own. I was like, well, I'm struggling with this because it's not calling out what our country is being complicit with. But then it kind of took a step back, you know, took a breather and, you know, acknowledged internally that if we want to acknowledge what our country is doing, what our country is complicit with, that would probably be a couple pages worth of listing out things. And so I have my reservation because this more or less cherry picks what the U.S. government is doing, but I don't think it even scratches the surface of how horribly complicit our U.S. government and our federal leaders are behaving in this situation, which is why I'm more or less in the camp of leaving the statement as it originally was, because then, again, we risk going down this rabbit hole. Well, we should mention this and this and this and this, and then I think it becomes tiring because then it's going to reach a point where nobody's going to ever be satisfied, or it's just going to induce a lot of anger and frustration as well.
Thank you again for your deliberation. I appreciate it. I think we can agree, City Clerk, if you could remove the additions to the whereas after our nation, which I know is a few different pieces there. I think it's our nation and our nation's. Was it our nation and our nation's leaders? Was the original?
Our nation and our leaders.
Our nation and our leaders. Okay. And then I think there was maybe another, which killings continue up above and needed to be deleted further up. There were 2 occurrences of that. Yeah, witch killings continue to increase. So there's a prior instance of that. Yeah, that needs to be deleted. Okay.
I'll briefly just state, thank you, City Clerk, for doing this on the fly. We appreciate it.
Real time. So I think we've reached agreement except on the last bit, which is whether to send it outside the country or not. Maybe I'm wrong.
Can we scroll down so I can make sure I'm remembering everything that's in there?
I think under the last whereas, if we could please strike the colon and change that to a period, please.
Thank you. I double-checked that I was doing that correctly in the original version, so for the record, I'd like to say that Preston added that and not me.
It was in red, so.
Yes, thank you. I'm related to too many lawyers to let that go unnoticed, so.
This is a unique situation. I wouldn't normally obsess about words so much, but this is pretty much all about words.
Yes, I was very glad that Aaron joined me. Councilmember Tiedemann joined me.
Did not want us to end up editing language on the dais, as I said, but I appreciate the discussion about it. Again, I think there are a lot of councils that could have this sort of discussion. So I am appreciative that we have, and I think while I'm always very attached to my own language, I can make my peace with this. I would still disagree with the changes to the final clause. I think from my perspective, it costs us nothing to include.
I'm happy to yield on that in the spirit of comedy. Not comedy, but comity with a T.
So City Clerk, in that case, we would unstrike in the last clause, be it further resolved, unstrike everything that's red. I don't know if that's actual edits or if that's just a strike.
They're edits.
Okay.
But I mean, I think
Is that a right
she's not going to
click
be able to. She's not going to be able to unstrike it. I don't. Well, maybe. Oh yeah, right on. Okay.
Okay.
Great.
City Clerk, if I may ask that if we could go to the top of the proclamation just to verify that we've gone through all items. So I will ask, and I know Aaron won't like this, but I will ask. There is the naming of the resolution, and this is absolutely the one that in all of our conversations, and particularly in our conversations with Aaron and I, we have gone back and forth quite a bit. I will say that for the purposes of bringing it to the council, I felt comfortable leaving it as ceasefire, but I do agree with some of those that I've heard in the public about the title being ceasefire and the use of any resolution that we pass having the term ceasefire in the title at least. There is perhaps disagreement, but there are those who perhaps are not within our community who are using anything that passes with the term ceasefire as simply a pointer to lay blame on one party. So I would, I don't know how you all feel about the title, but I would be open to the title being changed to include, and I'm going to pull this up, both for myself and for the city clerk, that it be changed to, and I will read this, but then I can tell you the exact wording again. A resolution of the Albany City Council supporting efforts for a path to long-term peace and stability in Gaza. So again, we're supporting efforts. We are, we're not creating long-term peace, but we're supporting efforts. And then I believe that our whereas clauses really are, or therefore be it resolved, list the ceasefire, list the humanitarian aid. And so it really is, our goal is really all of that. There were others in the community who had, trying to make that resolution be even more focused on us. I do think something in the effect of path to long-term peace and stability in Gaza is an option, but I'm also comfortable leaving it a ceasefire, but I did think it was appropriate for us to have a conversation at least about the title.
You're right, Mayor. As we've discussed, I feel quite strongly that I think we should leave it as is. I think that is the overarching point that is, and if this is going to be used by others, I think that will happen regardless of what we name it. The title does not define everything that's in the resolution. It also doesn't define the meaning that others may ascribe to it. But that is, I feel, the accurate title because it is the top line. It is not everything we want to say, but a title, by definition, can't be everything we want to say. That's why the rest of the resolution is there. But it is the top-of-line issue, and I think gets at the one of the biggest impetuses of why we're doing this and what we want to say.
I would say personally, I would prefer to leave the language ceasefire or leave as is, just because I think if we go back and forth with this, we're going to spend way more time than we want to on debating on what a title should look like, especially if this ends up becoming like a 2 versus 2 type of situation. I think at the end of the day, similar to what Councilmember Tiedemann had alluded to, you know, titles are titles. It's, you know, the content that matters, but titles are what also more or less define the whole product. If it's going to be changed, I would have a lot of reluctance towards that, but it certainly wouldn't stop me from, you know, using my platform, my positionality to still publicly call and refer to it as a ceasefire.
So Aaron and I have had this conversation quite a few times. So I will just say that I am comfortable keeping ceasefire in the language. I just wanted to make sure that we had a conversation about it. I will offer one other alternative, and then if there's no support for it, I'm fine with leaving the title as is, but it would be changing it to a resolution of the Albany City Council supporting an immediate bilateral ceasefire in Gaza, bilateral ceasefire to support a path to long-term peace and stability in Gaza. So it would be adding in the long-term peace and stability. So we have the word ceasefire, but why do we want the ceasefire? Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, and I appreciate you raising it for discussion. That's a lot of what I've done, just to fully flesh it out in the public record. I prefer the title the way it is proposed, because to me, the reason I'm supporting this is because of the starvation that is occurring and the mass starvation that is imminent, which is all about immediate bilateral ceasefire. It is, to me, I don't have particular judgment on anything beyond that.
I'll remove my amendment.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I don't need to look to Aaron to know where I'm going to land on this one.
I did remember something else that was commented upon, which was civilian prisoners. So I'm wondering if you could talk to that.
Yes, I meant to elaborate on that earlier. So again, every word that we chose cautiously.
Mm-hmm.
The term civilian prisoner to us and our understanding of what the Israeli government uses that to be is, in this case, would be any Palestinian who was arrested but not charged with a crime. And so those in Palestine who were arrested, so the example given of, I believe it was a 23-year-old who had done some killings, that is not considered a civilian prisoner. So that was our distinction. So those who have committed crimes are not included that.
I'll just add to that of saying that, yes, that is one thing that I think came out of our meetings. When we met with several Palestinian Arab business owners in Albany who made the point of, with how the discourse has gone so far, if you just say an unconditional release of all hostages, it doesn't necessarily read as saying that you also think that a great number of Palestinians who have committed no crime should also be freed, mm-hmm. who are currently detained. So that was an attempt to explicitly recognize that. Again, it's a good example of, in a simpler world, we could make a simpler statement that could be read to include all parties, but that is not the world in which we exist in currently.
So if I'm understanding correctly, civilian prisoner is the term that Israel uses to refer to prisoners who are not indicted, essentially, but they're in prison? Because it doesn't, it doesn't read, it's like not obvious at all to me, not being steeped in this.
I will say also that, it is an attempt to acknowledge a greater variety of people who are prisoners and who should be released. There's no perfect way to say that, because again, this is one of those doors that you can open, that you get into a discussion of what constitutes a just prisoner of war, who should be considered that, and how do you say that in a succinct way that doesn't end up putting a research paper in the middle of our resolution.
Right.
I know it is not, it is a term of art that I am advocating for a reading of, but I think it gets at the point of, we are saying that a large number of people need to be released, and those are not just on one side of this conflict. And that's what we were trying to get to, and came directly from discussing this with people in the community.
And I would emphasize that in all conversations, it was truly those who, it was never intended to equate to those who were taken as hostages and those who Israel has detained and put in prison for crimes that they will be charged with, right? So, or have been charged with. So we weren't, that was not what we intended when we said civilian prisoners.
I guess.
Actually, I believe Israel calls anyone who's been imprisoned and is considered to be an enemy combatant to be different than a civilian prisoner. Sorry. Like there is a different category.
Wait, so it's three categories.
We are not talking about anyone who has been involved in the
Right.
war. We're not talking about anyone
Sure.
who's been charged with a crime that maybe wasn't necessarily completely related with the war. We know that those who are being detained or imprisoned but not charged.
Because it reads on his face in this context as all prisoners who are not combatants or in the military. So it would be the equivalent of every prisoner in this country other than those in Guantanamo, I guess. Those are all civilians. So that's how it reads to me as a layperson, if you will. I mean, it seems like the term that would generally be used would be political prisoner, but that would introduce the doctoral thesis in the middle of the resolution. So I appreciate the discussion. I don't think there's a whole lot that can be done around that, but I didn't want to let it go by without asking. Since the resolves do now include the statement or resolves on the local situation, I don't know if the title should include something in that regard.
I don't think we need to change it.
Okay. I look to the authors to.
I will move passage of the resolution with the changes that we have agreed on.
And that being resolution 2024-16?
Yes.
I'm just looking at you because that's what you do every time I make a motion and I forget to include the resolution number.
I appreciate your commitment to Robert's Rules of Order. Yes, I would move resolution 2024-16 with the amendments that we discussed and agreed on in the council discussion.
Second.
Mayor Mickey,
Yes.
Councilmember Jordan,
Yes.
Councilmember Tiedemann,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Lopez,
Yes.
and the motion carries.
I want to thank everyone who participated today and in all past council meetings upon this, about this topic. Again, I please ask you to refrain. I believe, as Council Member Tiedemann mentioned, while this has not always been a comfortable conversation for all in the room and online, I am very thankful to all those participated and all that kept this a very civil and safe environment to have conversations and have a discussion. With that, I will adjourn this special meeting of the Albany City Council. Thank you very much.